Hello, everyone. We are your landlords, flooding out and tapping out so that you don't have to, with the occasional screw. I'm Hamhocks42, and as always, I'm joined by the one and only Astralsflame. Astros, how you doing, man?
I'm doing good, Ham. It's Friday afternoon. I've had a weekend preposition. I had a nap.
Yeah,
I'm
let's
waking up.
go.
It was a good
You were
nap.
sonambulating. Is that
Yeah,
the?
yes. Is that the word?
It is
Sin,
a word for
it is a
sleeping.
word.
It
I
is
don't know
a
what
word
that
for
word
sleeping.
is. It
It is one of
actually?
those words. It is. Yeah, a
Huh.
sonambulator is someone who is sleeping. Yeah, that is a
It's an
thing.
ambulator.
I only know that because I tried to watch what there's an old-timey movie. It's
Hmm.
like The Cabinet of Dr. Caligari or something like that. I'm so butchering that, and everybody like I'm sorry for like we're like a minute in and I'm already alienating all of our classic film buff fans. I'm sorry everybody. But there's a character, the Sunambulator, who's like a sleepwalker. It's a whole thing. Anyway,
Huh.
and that's where I learned that. And I tried watching that movie in about a half an hour and I just fell asleep. Same thing happened. I've tried watching Nosferatu twice. I can't do it. I'm sorry. I anyway, at the time I know it was it was absolutely like mind-blowing, but
Makes me
times
feel
have
so
changed. We're spoiled.
professional.
I know, right?
I'm a.
It really does.
What's the word again?
A sonambulator.
It's
Yeah,
ambulator. That sounds so professional.
it
I
does,
love
doesn't
it.
it? It's very highfalutin. Very,
Yeah.
yeah.
It's
It's
very bespoke.
needlessly. There you go. Very. You could say posh. I think is a great.
Yes.
That's what. Yeah.
I'm a
It's fancy.
somnambulator. Hmm.
Yes.
Hmm. Yes, cheerio.
Excuse me. I'm a yeah. Uh, yeah. I must take my leave to sonambulate. Yes. Yeah. That's how I'm gonna leave parties from now on. It's
Love
not,
it.
hey guys, yeah, I'm sleepy later. It's excuse me, I must take my leave. I must sonambulate. Anyway,
10 out of 10. Ham, how you doing today, the bud?
let's
How's your
go.
Friday?
I'm doing well, man. I'm doing well. So, yeah, this has been a pretty good week for me in general. Like, things have just been busy, but good. Good. I mean, the streams have been going well, and
Was?
no complaints, right? Like, that's always a good thing when things are moving along. And yeah, I mean, also it was the release of Ixalan officially out
Yes, it
into the wild
was.
on Arena, so we've been having some fun with that. Things are silly. Fight rigging is great. Um, I
It,
feel like we can both just agree, like fight rigging, awesome, great.
mm,
Yeah.
I will summarize this in one statement of I played it 5 best of 3 games last night and I went 4-1. But
Hmm.
the game that sticks to my mind, and I mentioned this solely because I know you'll appreciate it. I
Yeah.
was playing Jund fight rigging with the Tallies, because of course, and I ran into just
Naturally.
straight Gruul dinosaurs. Just
Yep.
straight Gruul dinosaurs. No specialties. They were like, let's go our lore keeper into the paleontologist, into like the hammer skull and the other stuff.
Yep.
It's like, cool, amazing. What was ridiculous is game one is they had a turn 4 Atali on ramp, and their Atali spun into my Atali. And then my Atali spun into the second one of my 3
Oh.
Atalis in my deck.
Oh. And so they're just getting free stuff off of their deck the whole time this is happening. Yeah.
Yeah, and what was amazing was game two, I got my Italia off of Fight Rigging, which then hit the Trumpeting Carnosaur, which then like discovered the 5/3 Ward 2 mana guy, and it was like fantastic.
Yeah,
Love
the
this stuff.
Hulking Raptor. Hulking
Yes.
Raptor for the look. That is a card that I looked at. I remember thinking, this is fine, I guess. Like this will be probably decent in Commander. And I tried doing a couple of different builds of like mono green and Gruul dinos. And the moment I added that, it all clicked. Like that card is shockingly good. Because it's
Breathe it.
funny because you look at it and it's like it's a 4-drop with 3 toughness. It does the lightning bolt, but it doesn't because it has ward 2. It's like, oh wait a minute.
The
Still
ward.
that's your Brotherhood's End, but that's about it. Yeah.
Well, like against domain, Lightline Binding suddenly is like 3 mana to get that thing off. Like I
Mm-hmm.
toe to toe fight rigging against domain. I was like,
It's not
I'm
bad, right? Yeah,
impressed. Like
it's not bad.
I I'm in the same boat. Like I looked at the card, I was like, this looks kind of cool, but like, yo, as a 4-drop slot, I actually, if I'm jamming a deck in with green, I kind of want to play that over like She Holder. Not gonna lie.
Mm-hmm. No, I think you're right. And because yeah, you can do stuff like you're saying. You can do turn 1 lore keeper into the turn 2. Like if you have the paleontologist on turn 3, you have a turn 2 rather. Sorry, you have a turn 3 hulking raptor with a little bit of mana to spare, if I'm not
Hmm.
mistaken. And then all of a sudden, yeah, by turn 4, you're dropping Atalis, you're dropping Galtas, like no problem. Like, it's
That's scary.
shockingly easy. It's terrifying. I've done a couple of turn 4 T Rex like Tyrannex Rexes in mono green. And it's like, good
Oh,
luck, dude. Like, this is happening. It is savage. I love it. Yeah, and I've also had a couple of matches in the best of one standard queue where I was trying to make a mono green list work, and it's definitely like a best of one style thing. Because the moment you have access to like your sweepers and your targeted destroy target creature spells come out of the sideboard, all of a sudden those pugnacious hammer skulls, which are insane, do not look so good. So
Yeah.
yeah, the moment you have all four destroy evils into the main and all four sunfalls, I'm screwed. But for 1v1, it's great. If you have not had the opportunity to go up against mono red on the play, right? Let them like that's like one of the worst best of one scenarios to be in, right? Like they're mono red, they're on the play, it is what it is. I've had a couple of times where they got me down to like 15, but on turn one, lore keeper. They go to their turn two, drop a couple creatures, swing, take all of it. It's like, okay, this sucks, this hurts, sure. Turn two, Hammer Skull. I now have a 6/6 live. They're down to like two cards in their hand, and they have like a Monastery's Whisper and a Kumano about to flip. They're just kind of like, like, yeah, you're not attacking through this anymore. All of a sudden, that Monstrous Rage in your hand is not looking so hot, is it? I have had a mono red player on the play scoop on turn two when I dropped a Hammer Skull. That did happen once. I was like, we did it, everybody. We can retire the deck as a winner. This,
Love it.
it's so good.
Absolutely love it.
Yep. Yeah, 6/6 on turn two is pretty good, it turns out. Because it can block for days. Like, no downside on the block. Yeah, anyway. But yeah, so as a result, I do think that Ixalan did help boost some things, and things are looking good, and
Yeah.
it's interesting to play. Yeah, a full-on Dino package actually works really well, and you can do it, ramping up or doing the fight rigging shenanigans into Gishaft, Galta, Atali, of course. Who doesn't love Atali? You can do all that stuff. That's an option, like absolutely, and it's pretty nasty if you can get it going. But there are also, yeah, it's funny. I tried making like a mono green aggro deck work, and it seems
Hmm.
right now like there are two options. You either have to go the full Dino option and really lean into the Ixalan stuff because the support's there and it totally works,
Right, right.
or you lean into like the plus one counter synergies. With like the evolving adaptive, which is an oil counter to be fair, but then like the
Yeah.
Quirion Beast Caller, the Kodama, that kind of thing. Like that whole package is still there and it's still okay. Uh, with the bloated contaminator as your 3-drop, which is still a good card. Like there's nothing wrong with it. It just doesn't line up well. I feel like the dinos are a little faster and they go a little bigger, and that's exactly what green needs. So yeah, feels good.
Yeah, I would agree on that. Like Green's kind of had that sort of lackluster. It's been interesting, but it's been like a turn slow. But the one
Right.
mana
It's like,
dork,
yep.
Doorkeeper
Oh my
just
goodness,
fixes so much. I'm so happy we have a one
so
mana
much.
dork in standard. And I kind of want to tie into the point because this is going to bring us to our topic for this week. You touched on a player immediately conceded upon seeing the Hammer Skull.
hmm
Conceding in Arena versus conceding in Paper. And this leads us into the topic. The
hmm
differences between paper magic and arena magic. What really makes the magic experience of the two, right?
Absolutely.
That's our topic.
Yeah,
That's what we want to bring in. Like,
that's what we're
so
gonna talk about.
yeah,
Yep.
magic
Yeah.
and arena, magic and paper.
Yeah, and they are shockingly different beasts. They
Mm.
really are. I think Arena is a really powerful tool, and it is a wonderful client. It has its issues with the
Mm.
code base, and there are some quirks that we've learned to just kind of work around. When possible. So that is what it is. We don't need to go into that too deep today, because at the end of the day, we both spend a lot of our time on it still, and we're
Yeah,
very much invested in that program, right? We just are. It's funny actually. Now is one of the rare moments as we're recording this where I don't just have the arena window open on the side.
honestly,
Like I just,
it's actually
it's
closed
funny.
right now.
Right? Yeah, my stream, yeah, or it's funny, my Steam like hours that I have listed on it is like insanely high, and I was looking at that, it was like 700 hours or something ridiculous like that. I was like, what? No way! And it's like, well, one, I am on there all the time. Like I legitimately do play a ton of that game every day. So like, all right, sure, but there's also like the other side of it is there were plenty of times when I just like have it open because I was tinkering with the deck, and then I like walk away to do something else, and I just don't bother closing it, and it just stays open for hours, just sitting there. It's just one of the open windows. Like I have the browser I was working on, and then I have the deck I was working on, and those are just sitting on my anyway. But so Arena's a really cool platform, and one of the things that I wanted to touch on is kind of um what Arena is necessarily and what it should be to the players. Because I
Mm.
think what it is today is different from what Wizards set out to make when they launched it, what, 5 years ago now?
Yeah,
Um,
2018.
Yep.
2018.
Yeah. Yeah. So it's been a little over 5 years since it launched at this point. And then we're talking about they was in beta for a shockingly long time. But when they launched it, it was a very flashy tool with,
Mhm.
the fancy animations and everything. There were no eternal formats on it whatsoever. It was just the standard of the time. And that was it. And when the first rotation happened, if I recall correctly, they actually just removed the cards from the client. And the
Oh,
very, very first one, which happened like the first year it was live,
I
where it was still
think
very much in
so.
beta.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, and that's why they had to, like, with Amonkhet and Kaladesh,
Remaster, right? That's
they had to
right.
remaster them and bring them back in. But they were live on the client when it first launched, if I recall correctly. I don't know if it was like if they were buggy or whatever, or maybe the code base was different then than it is now. I don't know what the story was on the back end. But I believe that was a thing when they first launched it. Those were in the client, and then they rotated out, and a whole bunch of people, they got negative feedback for it, and so as a result, they launched the historic format.
Mhm.
And when they launched the historic format, there was a lot of PR stuff going on around that. I don't know if you remember when they
A little
announced
bit.
it, they said that if you wanted to redeem wild cards for a card that was historically legal but no longer standard legal, it would cost you 2 wild cards of the rarity instead
It
of
was
just one.
two.
That was what they
I
first
don't
announced.
remember that.
They announced that as their intention. The amount of crap they got within hours of making that announcement caused them to roll it back like the next day. They were like, oh, never mind, just kidding. Because like people pointed
Ooh.
out how just genuinely ridiculous that was. And they did roll it back and they've never implemented that. Thank goodness. Like they listened to the community on that one, which I was seeing suspicion the community was not necessarily the nicest about that at the
Probably
time.
not, but in due
Probably.
warranted reason not to be, right?
Yeah, I feel like getting upset about that is, or being frustrated by that is fair. But anyway, so now we have the system where all the cards are legal on historic, and we also have that match, and then we also have standard. And as things rotate out of standard, they're still legal in historic. That's great. But since then, over the last 2 years or so, they've introduced a number of other formats to the client.
Mhm.
Brawl all of a sudden got reintroduced and brought into the format, or brought into Arena. And Brawl, for when it was first conceived, was only to match standard.
Yeah,
Well,
60 card
now
singleton.
it was a 60-card singleton with a commander, because it was like, what if we take all of the pieces of commander that everybody is aware of and thinks is okay, and we take all the stuff that's great about commander that makes it wonderful, we take that out, and then we just keep the rest of it. This is going to be awesome, right? And it wasn't, and the adoption wasn't great. But enough people pointed out, by the way, so this brawl idea, which in paper is kind of silly, like why would I want to build a commander deck that is going to rotate?
Yeah.
Like that just kind of is ridiculous when, like, it just doesn't kind of pass the sniff test, as like a good idea in general. Um, and so like it ended up kind of it fell into obscurity in paper. But then a bunch of people pointed out, but you could do that on Arena, and the cost of entry is minimal, and people have some
This is true.
flexibility, and it actually matches that client very, very well.
Mhm.
And then they did that, and then modified and made a historic brawl, which we know today, which is kind of the commander analog on Arena. But even that is dramatically different from what we know of as commander. But it gives commander players, people who are highly invested in commander as their, like, kind of their main, if not only, inroad into Magic, that gives them something to do on this client that fits kind of the experience that they're familiar with. And that's pretty cool. And I'm glad we have that. So now, and then of course we also have Pioneer and Explorer, which was brought in as well because of the introduction of Alchemy. Holy cow. So at the end of the
Oh,
day, what I believe Arena was initially intended to be was a standard simulator.
yeah.
I'm pretty sure the entire point was, here's an opportunity for people to play standard that is less expensive than buying a standard deck. And and the Mythic Championships and everything that was going on when they first launched it, all the big esports push and all that jazz, was all done on Arena, and it was all standard from if I recall correctly.
I believe you're right.
Um,
Yes.
yeah, and all of that was before the pandemic. Fun fact. There's this Mandela effect that we just assume that was just pushed Arena super hard because of the pandemic.
That was
And the
pre-pandemic.
reality is, exactly, the timing on it worked out such that they kind of doubled down on Arena because people were at home anyway. So like, okay, here's an opportunity to keep playing Magic, which I don't know about you, but I appreciated very, very much.
Extremely, yes.
Yeah, no, it was great. Like it worked out. It worked out I think it helped. That I do think that helped the adoption rate of the client. Like honestly, because people were home looking for stuff to do, right?
Yeah,
And
and
there we go. And
it fit the niche. You wanted to play
mhm.
Magic, and it was a good way to just sit down and do it.
Yeah, but we've reached a point now where Arena is far more than a standard simulator. There are a whole bunch of people who play Arena who don't bother with standard at all. And
Yeah,
then you have people like me who never played standard in paper. That was never my jam. Um, ever. I don't know. It just didn't get its hooks in me. And the idea of spending that much money on a deck of cards that I would get to play with, and then by the time I could no longer play with it, it wouldn't be worth anything. Seemed like a really bad idea. It seemed like a poor investment strategy. And if it was like a weekly, Friday Night Magic thing, I don't know. Then it was never enough of a draw for me. And so as a result, I always wanted to play standard, but it just was prohibitive. Like it didn't make logical sense. It was a very inconvenient format for me. The moment Arena showed up, I immediately saw it as, oh, this is my opportunity to get into standard. And that's exactly what I did. And I've been playing a crap ton of standard ever since. And I've been absolutely loving it. To the point where as a Magic player, I'm quick to say that I am a standard player. Like I identify that, yeah, as kind of my zone or my format, right? And I don't own a deck in paper that is standard.
I
Like,
relate with that. Like
yeah,
honestly, like I played Standard in paper back in Lorwyn, which would have been 2008, 2009 thereabouts.
I think
So,
Lauren was earlier than that. I thought Lauren was
or maybe it was
2005
'07.
ish. It might
No,
have been.
it
Yeah.
definitely wasn't '05. I know that because I had I was young, but I wasn't that young.
All
I
right, fair
believe it
enough.
was like '07, '08 kind of timeline. And I
Yeah.
remember this because that was the first standard deck I made elementals. I played at a
Okay.
regional event, all that kind of stuff, and that was the first and only time I ever got in standard. And then similarly, when Arena popped onto the page to try and stuff, I played Historic. I started a year after Arena had been out. I started '09, 2019 for Arena. Historic has
Yep.
already been out. But after playing a bit of Historic, I was like, why don't I play Standard? I'll try something a little bit fresh. And I mean, much the same. I identify as a Standard and Commander and Legacy player now, and Standard is my go-to on the client. And frankly, I think like the Arena space is fantastic for Standard.
Oh, right there
Much
with you.
better than paper. I love playing in paper. I love seeing things, but from an economical standpoint, Arena is so much cheaper to
Oh
build
my
and
goodness,
make a
yes.
deck for Standard.
Yeah. Because right now, if you want, if you want to build a competitive standard deck, you're looking at spending at least $200, right? Like
I,
the mana, but
even then, I
you got
think
the mana
more.
base. And heaven forbid you want to build like the domain list or like the Esper mid-range list that has all the where if you're looking at getting like a playset of Rafines, you got at least 2 Shale Dreads. You got like it gets out of hand really fast, right? And you got all the triumphs and everything. Like it's a very expensive proposition, right? And so if I'm spending $400 or $500, I mean, heaven forbid I want to play a mono blacklist that runs 4 Shale Dreads. Like, oh, like
Hey,
yeah,
hey,
that
there's
that
four
hurts,
hundred
man.
dollars and four
Yeah, that's four hundred
cards.
dollars in 4 cards. Like that hurts, man. Like that hurts real bad. So like if I want to build one of those things in paper, I get it now for it's funny because we've now moved to a 3-year rotation, which the idea of that is to support paper play, right? Clearly. Because so the idea is okay, I can buy this paper deck, and now my Shale Dreads are going to be legal game pieces until 2025. So as long as there is going to be some kind of competitive deck that involves this card, I now have them. This is a resource I can use to make sure that I'm going to stay relevant within this format, for another 2 years, effectively. So, all right, I can appreciate that, but that's like $400 or $500 on 75 pieces of cardboard that you are now locked into. If you play that deck a dozen times and are tired of it, well, too bad. That's your deck. If you're lucky, you can sell them and like buy something else that is similar. But even then you're locked into that deck, and you're hoping that it stays competitive, so the value of those cards stays up. You know, on Arena, a brand new set comes out. If you spend, I don't know the exact number, but it's something like $200.
It is
Like
200.
day one, you spend $200, drop it, but turn that into packs immediately. You now own that entire set.
If not close to. So I
Yeah, or
tested
just about.
this time
Hmm.
around. I didn't quite do that. I think I did about 170.
Hmm.
I have 98% of all of Ixalan, and I still
Yeah,
have like 20 rare wild cards. I have all the rares in Ixalan now. I'm
nice,
missing 25 mythics, and I have like 8 mythic wild cards. But like I have the twos and threes of the mythics that I need.
nice. That's great. Well, and
Not
I've
yeah,
been saving up my in-game currency just from my various grindings
do
for a little while, and I had a couple of draft tokens at the start of this, and so I ran a number of Ixalan drafts when it first came out. Between that and dropping $40, I'm at like 80% complete on the set right
perfect.
now, with like 15 or 16 rare wild cards in reserve. So like I'm doing fine. And as things continue, like when I get enough gold through my daily quests, which is about once per day, by the way,
Mhm.
um, I end up getting enough gold to pick up a pack. A lot of time I'll save for the mythic packs because those end up being a better value in general.
Always.
And like, and I know in a month or two, just from grinding at this point, having not put in another dime, I'm gonna get the whole set. Like it's not hard to do, you know? And so all of a sudden, as a result now, we're in a position where we can play every standard legal deck because we've done that a handful of times. Like,
And I
I know
think
yeah, that means I don't know, I feel like that's worth something, and we also get to play them more because we play them whenever we want, on demand. That's
so.
big time.
That is huge. Like, yes, having access to making any deck we want, having access to play at any time. The added benefit I see is we don't have to tear decks apart as well. Your
Mhm.
four of copies can just be split between any deck you want. You don't have to be like, this deck has my 4 copies of the Bonehorn Dracusaur, and then suddenly have to take them out of this deck and put them in another. No, you just say, my 4 are in this deck, and then I build the second deck. I add another 4 in here. Like, your collection doesn't care where they are. It's just going to slot them
Mhm.
in. And that to me is amazing because, like in paper, if you want to bounce between multiple decks, if you got 4 copies, you're like unsleeve, resleeve, unsleeve, resleeve, move this over here, prep this over there. And like,
Well,
I
and
mean, it
heaven
gets
forbid you
tedious.
absolutely, it gets tedious, and heaven forbid you miss track of something and register a
Yeah,
59 card deck, and you get deck checked at a tournament and get disqualified because oh I forgot to move the yeah my Atraxas from one deck into this one. Like well crap, it's
yeah.
those kind of things can happen, and that's just the convenience factor is very real. Yeah, absolutely. And man, how many copies of Atali and Fight Rigging would I need if I wanted to own these decks in paper? So
Like
many.
20 at
Oh,
least.
at least. Whereas yeah, in Arena, it's like I got 4 of them. Great. We're off to the
Sign them
races,
up, ship them,
baby.
done.
Ship them. Done. Exactly. Well, and it's also cool if you're focused on competitive play. You don't need to worry about the vast majority of these cards. There are a lot of cards that are fun to brew around, and so as content creators and as just kind of fans of the game who want to go deep, we dive into those. Like the Ancient One, the Millennium Calendar, Chameel, the Inner Sun. These kind of things are like these goofy effects that are unpredictable and they're like high flying and we're going for the Twitch clips. We're not trying to just win games here. Like we're not. That's kind of
I
I mean, of course, we're trying to
mean,
win games. Don't get me wrong, we are. But like, there are plenty of times. I'm honestly in working through trying to find like a good mono green list or a good drill list. There were plenty of times where I had people in my chat be like, "Why wasn't fight rigging in there? You have the hammer skull." And it's like, because I want to see if I can do it without it. It's not even that I don't like it. It's a good call, but like, I want to see if I can operate without this and see if it works better without it. Like we're testing something because we
yeah,
can. We have that flexibility. Yeah, and so you can do those kind of things. So yeah, like if I want 4 copies of the Ancient One for some goofy like Sultai self mill thing that I'm trying, or yeah, to try to trigger fight rigging on turn 3. Like if I'm trying to get that going, that's a mythic wild card that I need to worry about. If you're worried about just competing in on the ladder, getting to a high enough level, and hopefully qualifying for the Pro Tour after a number of events, well, you don't have to worry about the Ancient One or the Millennium Calendar unless you believe that that's something that's gonna get you there. So like when you get your mythic wild cards, just craft the Sheoldred first.
yeah, pretty
And
much,
like once
yeah.
you have you got the 4 Sheoldreds, you got the 4 Fiends, you're good. Like
I I,
yeah,
I do want to say, dear listener, if you have found a deck where you are winning with the Millennium Calendar and a positive above 55% win rate, drop the deck list down below in the comments or
please
hit
do.
us up in a DM because, like, I mean, we'd like to do it.
Yeah, 100%. No, I pulled off the Millennium Calendar one time.
Oh my goodness.
Once. It was during the early access, and we did it once. We were going up against Carlos C. Favreto Jr. Great dude, by the way. Great streamer. Follow him. He's great. But Just a shout out for a friend. But yeah, he was playing a very like kind of a dirtily artifact thing. I don't if he had the Millennium Calendar in it, he didn't find it, but it was trying to do some kind of like dirtle artifact thing. So neither of us had creatures. And we were just doing like solitaire artifact nonsense. And I was just like, calendar, tap it.
Amazing.
Tap it. Like go, 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 go. And I was using the Enigma engine alongside the Millennium Calendar. And then we
Ah.
pulled it off that way. Or not the Enigma engine, the Enigma
Oh,
Jewel.
yeah, the
Yeah.
Mimo Jewel. Yes, yeah.
Yep. So we had the Enigma Jewel. We had Teferi, who sells the sunset because that could untap some stuff, so we could reactivate the calendar. We were doing it that way. And yes, dear listener, I know if I just put all will be one in that deck, it would win far more games and be far more consistent. But I wanted to go for 1,000. Dang it! It was- yeah, it's the same reason why you go for the 20 power on Terror Star. It's like I know I don't need this, but I want to. Okay, I want to do it. Anyway, but no, so that's the only reason I was able to do it once. The moment I went up against anybody who like ran a creature in their deck, the thing folded. Like I couldn't come up with a way that makes it work. Honestly, it's probably just Sunfall's Leyline Bindings. It's just that package. But at that
Probably.
point, you can just run whatever finisher you want. Like I gotta
Yeah.
be honest. One of my biggest pet peeves is when people come up with like a really slick jank deck or a really slick janky combo deck, and it's just the tier 1 control deck with like a bad combo as the finisher. Where it's like,
Yup.
this could have just been herd migration. What are you doing? Anyway,
Should have been herd
yeah.
migration.
It really should have just been herd migration. Yeah.
But you bring up a
Anyway.
point though. Right? So Millennium Calendar
Hmm.
counters and triggers. The simplification and ordering of stacks on Arena versus Paper and the ordering of triggers. Is that
Yeah.
not assistance from Arena actually a very I'll say it's a double-edged sword before I say complete praise about it.
Hmm.
It is very handy for handling the ordering of triggers, showing you how to stack triggers, and
Hmm.
completely handling all your triggers. The downside being it handles all your triggers, so you may not pick up on everything or wonder why things happen. But the
Yep.
system itself is an assistance, quite handy because in paper it can be complicated
Oh my goodness, yes.
to handle like all these things get plus one, and then I have like a Lord buff. My entire board's getting plus one, but then there's like all these things getting like trample counters and like Magic is
Oh yeah.
complex.
It is. Well, and the timing of when you tap your mana and how it gets spent versus, and then like when you have triggers, the one that's very interesting that I know I personally and I think a lot of other players became more familiar with as Children of the Apocalypse became more popular. The day she was introduced,
Mhm.
but as that card has become ubiquitous, active versus non-active players in
Yes.
trigger stacking, that is a big freaking deal. And because I play so much Arena, there have been plenty of Commander games where I've been the guy who's like, okay, hold up. The stack actually, that hits the stack first. You have to pick the target. Then this trigger like goes up on top of it because you're the non-active player. So you will then resolve first and then followed by the like that sequencing is something that you see on Arena and it walks it through for you. And that is like it makes a huge difference. Also, there are a ton of little shortcuts that Arena will take, to your point,
Yeah.
where like for example, like trample damage is a great example of this. So if I have, say, Agar the Freezing Flame or Rith the Awakener, or no, that one I think is non-combat. But anyway, like if I have a situation where I want to be dealing excess damage to your creatures, but I have a trample creature, the actual rule is when you're attacking with a trampler, you get to decide however much damage is assigned to the creature and assigned to the player, with the understanding and the minimum rule that you have to apply enough damage to the creature to kill it. You know? But we all just assume, because 99% of the time, actually 99.99999% of
Yeah.
the time, I want to deal lethal damage to the creature and the rest on your face. Like, that's just how, or the planeswalker that I'm attacking. Like, and that's usually correct. And so the game just shortcuts it and just does that for you. And they actually put things in place where if you have an effect on your side of the board that cares about excess damage, they will take that safeguard out.
Mhm.
And when you attack in that case and they block, you'll actually get a new prompt that you probably haven't seen. A lot of players haven't seen this. I know I have. And you can turn it
Mhm.
on so you can see it all the time. Actually, you do have that option in one of the settings. Um,
Control F, full control.
full control is a beautiful thing. I'm a big fan. There are certain combos you can only do in full control. Um,
Witch Oven and Mayhem Devil.
yes, always full control that always because it does not work the way you want it to if you don't. Yeah. Also, like there are certain triggers that occur on your upkeep
Mhm.
And like, there are certain things you want to cast on your upkeep, like especially with like the other one is Hitotsugu and Kairi. The
Yes, yeah.
moment you understand how the stack works, and the moment you understand how ordering simultaneous triggers work, that gets out of hand fast. But you need to know how it works, and you need like it is so easy to play that incorrectly, you know. And that's why actually one of the things you'll notice when you're watching like pro tour coverage or a lot of streamers, I'll tell you right now, on my stream you see this all the time. I have the auto order trigger turned off on my stream.
Mm,
Like it is off 100% of the time.
good
I
to do.
never want arena order ever because they oftentimes get things wrong.
Extremely.
A lot of the situations, the algorithm will get it right. So like it'll identify, okay, this trigger puts +1/+1 counters on all your creatures. This trigger puts a creature in play. You probably want that one first. You probably want the creature, and then the creature get the counter. Like they'll identify that kind of thing, get that right. However, with Hitotsugu and Kairi, if you have Hitotsugu and Kairi on board, and then you cast another one or you clone it, it will order it incorrectly because what you want the enter the battlefield trigger to resolve first and the death trigger to resolve second. That way you can set up what's on the top of your deck and then fire it. It's awesome when it works, but if you don't have the auto order trigger disabled, the game will do it wrong. And so if you found a content creator who has a deck built around that and you watch their video on it and it looks dope and you want to play it and you just download it and just run it, it like the game will not do it correctly. Or it will not do it the way you want it to.
Yeah, it'll
Um,
mess it up entirely.
it'll just get the order wrong unless you set that. And so if a content creator does a video on that, they should explain that so that you know, at least, even if you don't turn it off forever, I would recommend at least turning it off when you're playing that deck specifically. But even if you don't have that in that situation, at the very least, know to go into full control when you're about to do that, you know, so that you get that opportunity. Anyway, but yeah, but as a result, though, on Arena, to kind of get back to the whole point, you see the order of the stack. You see how triggers resolve. You see, like, choosing targets, for example. You know, like, if an effect would put a Glasspool Mimic and a creature into play at the same time. In paper, it's not really intuitive. Like, okay, but can the Glasspool Mimic come in as a copy of this creature that comes in alongside it? The answer to that's no, because you have to pick the creature before Glasspool comes in. And that's not really intuitive necessarily to a paper player, or it's easy to think that that's not how that resolves, but it is, you know. And when on Arena, when you do the collected company or whatever, and you're about to put two things, including a Glasspool Mimic on the field, like if you don't have something live, the Glasspool Mimic just hits and it's like a 0/0 and it dies.
It's
It
gone
just
forever.
poof, it just pieces out. It's like, well, or it goes into your graveyard and then
Yeah,
you can reanimate it later. But you know, um, but yeah, you're like, why can't I do my Cavalier of Night Glasspool combo? It's like, well, you just need to go around again. Yeah, in any event. But no, so it's a whole thing. And I really appreciate how Arena spells all that stuff out. And the more you play, the more familiar you get with those weird little edge cases. And I found for me personally, it has helped me kind of unravel stuff in paper and
mhm.
really kind of understand. And in Commander, especially because like that's primarily how I play paper these days. And things get weird
Oh
fast.
yeah,
People will
oh
bring
yeah.
because triggered abilities are fun and people bring them. And so as a result, you know, keeping track of those things on the board state just becomes very complicated very fast. And so understanding, okay, we have these four players, like I'm about to draw a card and gain life and put a creature into play. How many triggers are we gonna get coming off of this, and who's are gonna resolve first? How does this work? You know, it's very interesting, and Arena helps kind of get your head around a lot of how that works in a very fundamental way that I think is important. Yeah.
Extremely. And like one of the things I really do appreciate, aside from like the trigger bonuses that Arena keeps track of,
Hmm.
is the ordering of the graveyard.
Yes.
Fundamentally, the graveyard is not allowed to be reordered unless there is some effect that says otherwise. It
Hmm.
is in the core rules that it shall not be reordered because there are cards, of course there are, that
Of
care
course there
about
are.
graveyard order.
Yep. Well,
So
and it's funny too, looking at some of those designs. They're actually really cool
they
designs. Like,
are.
yeah, it's like you may return to this to the battlefield as long as there are three creatures above it in the graveyard. Huh? Like, why isn't that a thing? Like, that's an interesting way to track how
I
many
would love
creatures
it.
have died since this. You know, like, I don't know. I think that's a cool idea, but they don't do it as often. Well, they don't do anything with it anymore.
Yeah.
Because it's a pain to track, which is fair. Yeah.
But on Arena, it's so much easier. So bring
So
us that in Arena. We don't care about the graveyard order because we can't touch it anyways. But it also
yeah,
just makes me
cannot.
really happy. Like I am a fidgety player. I will shuffle my hand in paper, and there is just kind of something nice about like exactly
I
like
have a little stack of
that's
infinite
me.
tokens, and I
Ah,
shuffle these all the time. Anyway, yeah.
I have like a deck beside me, so if I get like the urge, I can like open it up and just shuffle it. But like
Hmm.
I try not to, and that's one thing I appreciate about Arena is like I don't have to physically do that. But what I will do instead is I will hold my mouse over a card and I'll be like da 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 da
Oh yeah.
because I have to do something. And I appreciate that Arena lets me do that because I do the hand vision in paper and I can at least do it in Arena and the client.
Oh yeah. No, I know exactly the move you're talking about. And there are so many little details about the arena interface that do a great job of mirroring the paper experience. Because there are a lot of little cues that you can get in paper,
Yeah.
right? Like what is the player looking at? Are they fidgeting with their hand? Like you can see, and I love the fact one simple thing that they had on day one on Arena that is critical, in my opinion, and it does impact gameplay, um, is the ability to see what your opponent is looking at. If your
Yes, that
opponent
is
hovers
huge.
a card, it glows. That is so cool. It is such a simple little interface detail, and it has always been there. And I don't know about you, but I take it for granted all the time. But
Yeah.
holy cow! And that's one of those. But in paper, the opponent just being like, "Wait, what does that do again?" It's that moment, right? And I
Yeah.
don't know about you, but I've had some games that are super intense, and my opponent has had like an onboard trick, and I was like, I'm pretty sure they can activate that, and they're gonna kill me here. And I make a point of keeping my mouse as far away from it as possible, so that it doesn't glow and highlight it.
Yes, and they don't touch it. They don't see it.
Don't
I've
touch it.
got
Don't no, no.
yes.
Pretend like it's not there. Maybe they'll miss it.
I have done that. I've done it.
Those
It's a
little things.
strategy.
It totally is. Yeah. And I've also done it where like yeah, you can also do the inverse where like maybe something can only be activated as a sorcery, like you highlight
Yep.
it. Like you can do this kind of thing, get your opponent thinking in certain ways, and they can do it to you too. And
Yep.
we're playing a card game with hidden information, right? That's part of the fun. That is part of the game, and I love that little cues like that are part of the game as well.
I,
Um,
to that
yeah.
same kind of effect, like on the queue, this is one of my favorite things to do. Enabling full control just on the end step of my turn. So when it goes to my opponent's untap and upkeep to draw phase, why is the game pausing? What's going on? What does my
Yep.
opponent have? And I love inciting that because it makes, I mean, we can't see the opponent, but it makes them, you think that they panic. Because I've been through it. I'm like, wait, why is the game, what's going on?
Uh huh.
Why am I not drawing?
Yep. Oh yeah. 100%.
My holding,
Yeah.
my opponent's got priority. Wait, what? What?
Well, or if you, yeah, the other thing, if you're ever playing a control deck and you have blue mana open, even if your fist is full of lands, turn it to full control. Because then when they play something, it will pause.
Mhm.
And that is the kind of the signal that you have an action you could take. Whether or not you actually do is irrelevant. And that's actually one of the things. It's the mental game, exactly. There are certain onboard activations that will pause the game for you in
Yep.
those cases. Like if you have a Bartolome down, that's a sack outlet. If you have like the poison dart frog, you can pay 2 to give it death touch or whatever. Like if you have those and the mana to activate them, it will give you priority every single time.
Mhm.
That will happen. But if you don't have something like that, I know in the past, when Fabled Passage was still standard legal, I know it was a common move. Put a Fabled Passage and just leave it uncracked.
Yep.
And so that was just hold priority for you forever. And it's just like, and your opponent sees it, they know. And so it's like, but do they have something? Do they not have something? I don't know. What's going on? And yeah. And I don't know about you, but I've definitely played out bad cards in the hopes of pulling the counterspell or like the
And there's
suboptimal play,
nothing there.
and there's nothing there.
Yep.
And it's like,
Yep.
I'm not beating him down to Sheldred. I'm playing out my Blood Tithe Heart because like I didn't want my Sheldred to get countered, even though she wouldn't have. Like, dang it. Yeah, it's great. It's super fun. Those little mind games are what make Magic great. Or well, it's one of the many things that makes Magic great.
Agreed.
And I feel like Arena did the best it could to kind of emulate some of that stuff and give us that language, that unspoken language between players that we see. You get it in paper, you can say things, you can do visual cues, you can try to mislead. The classic move of having a token in your deck box that your deck doesn't make, just to get them thinking that you might have something that you don't. Like that, like those little things, you can do that in paper, and like that's fun and it's a cool thing. And Arena, you don't necessarily have that. Although even then, you do have your choice of avatar
You do?
and your companion. I can't tell you. I mean, by the way, if you play mono red and just love mono red, set Teferi as your avatar. You will catch people off guard. I guarantee it.
That's so
Just
smart.
do
I
it.
love that.
Because I don't know about you, but when I see Teferi, Hero of Dominaria,
I think control. I
crying.
really do.
100%. This is gonna be the control fest. Let's go. And yeah, the mountain on turn one. That'll get them thinking. It's fun. Anyway, yeah, you can do that kind of thing, and it's just anyway. So we have these fun little nonverbal cues on Arena, and I think that's great. Yeah, the general gameplay experience on that client compared to paper is just it is very different, but that doesn't mean it's bad.
No,
I actually think it's great.
I do as well.
Yeah.
It's a whole different. It's a similar dynamic, but different. And frankly, the experience between paper and arena is much closer than we might think, especially when it becomes the BM discussion. Your go, your go, your go. Salt rope, your go.
Salt rope. Yep.
That kind of action of the opponent just being in the bad manners. For those that don't know, BM means bad manners.
Yes.
But the spamming of emotes, the holding up line, players in paper do that too. They will say words to you. They'll try to throw you off. They'll purposely hold up a turn on a delay and even potentially get like a judge's game warning for
Yep.
holding up a game just to throw you off. It's another mental game.
It is. Yeah, and that's something that yeah, the one that gets me is the salt rope. That's
Yeah.
the one.
I
And
still don't understand that to this day.
I don't get it either. I think in a best of 3, if you've won one of the games and they want to drain it out a little bit to get in your head in the hopes of getting you tilted going
For
into
sure,
game
I
2
can
or
get
whatever.
that.
Sure. Like in best of 1,
What's the
like
point?
if the game's
Yeah.
over and you've lost, why are you sitting here for a minute and a half wasting everybody's
Yeah.
time? Like it's wasting your time too. And yeah. That's just being a jerk. But anyway, yeah. Concede first. If you're gonna alt F4, concede first.
For
Don't be a
sure.
jerk.
Like,
Yeah.
it was the strangest thing the other day. So, like, I've been trying out a few different Explorer decks on the, like, Explorer Best of 1 and Best of 3. And I was jamming out a Krug of Fires. I ran into this really sweet deck the opponent had. It was the Toughness deck. So, I forget what the enchantment is.
Yep.
But, all their toughness is assigned as power instead. And
High alert, I believe.
yeah, it was a high alert deck. So like turn 2, they
Mhm.
had the 0/6. Turn 3, high alerts down. I'm taking 6 damage. My hand has a Fires of Invention, 3 lands, and a Bone Crusher Giant. I got nothing.
Oh yeah, no, you're not in a good spot there. Yep.
I'm in a bad
That's
spot. And
that's
then
that.
like,
Big time.
turn 4, they drop down to 0/5. So they got a 6/6 and a 5 of me. I've played Fable out, and I got this little 2/2. I take the 11. And Fable lets me discard. I got to land in a Bone Crusher. I'm like, well, I guess I can play in this Fires of Invention and play out the Bone Crusher Giant and see what I top deck. I played out the Fires of Invention and my opponent just scooped. I was like,
What?
why did you scoop?
I
And
don't
like they
understand.
emoted me at the end with the little
Yeah.
hedron with the sleeping thing. I was like, I don't think you realize you were about to win next turn, opponent, and you just
Yeah.
gave me a free win. Like,
That's play it out, everybody.
yeah,
Play it out.
always play
Yeah,
it.
I've had that happen before. I've also had it where yeah, I've had it where my opponent has had lethal, but for some reason they didn't attack, and then I beat them like the next turn, or like
Yeah,
they
that's always weird to me.
like without attacking. It's like read the board, see what's going on. Like also keep an eye on the library. In especially in grinding matches, I can't tell you how many times I've had like one card left, and I did not have my opponent on any meaningful clock. But yeah, like, the idea of it's easy to see a situation and assume, oh, I don't usually win here, and as a result, therefore I'm dead. When the most exciting moments in Magic that can ever happen are when you see that moment and you think you're doomed and you come back and win it.
Yeah,
I've
the
beaten an
comeback.
opponent who fired Emergent Ultimatum off on me and got to ult a Liliana Dreadhorde General. I have done that
Ooh.
once.
Ooh.
Only once. That has only happened once, and thank goodness I was recording it. So it is on my YouTube channel. I need to clip that, or I need to find that clip. It's a couple of turns. It's like a 4-minute thing if I were to show it. But like they blasted me out, and I had a Titan's Nest down, and I held
Okay.
that, and I was able to bring back. It was a Meyer Triton, and I had some kind of aristocrat effect online. And at one point, I had them down to 2, and they had a Vorinclex. I was dead next turn, and I attacked with the Meyer Triton, which has Death Touch. And and so it was a situation where I think it might have been a Bastion of Remembrance or something. So it was like, you either take this 2 damage and die, or these creatures hit, both of them die, and you'd get pinged for 2 and die. It was one of those where it had no business working. It only happened because I got lucky on the top decks and I didn't scoop when the Emergent Ultimatum hit. You know? Don't get me wrong, the 90% of the time, that Emergent Ultimatum hits and the game's over. And if you just don't want to deal with it, sure, I guess. But you never know when those crazy creative lines can happen and those moments can happen. The other thing, if you scoop, I've said this all the time, I say this so much, I've probably said it on this very program. If you scoop, every time you have a 10% chance, if you only have a 10% chance of coming back in a game, and you scoop it because of that, if you play 100 games, you just gave up 10 free wins.
Absolutely. And those 10 free
And on
wins could have
Arena,
been
we're
something.
jamming 100 games. Like, it's not hard.
Oh yeah, easily. Like,
Yep.
so here's another thing about Arena to Paper. When we play in Paper in a tournament, it's 8 rounds. Maybe sometimes 5, maybe 6, maybe 10 if it's really big. But that's what we're doing in Paper. On Arena, we are jamming on a ranked ladder that is so different from tournament. And yeah, you know what? You might think, all right, it's 6 wins to 1 rank, 4 ranks a level. That's 24 wins. That's not a lot. Yeah, that's 24 wins that you have to consecutively get with a positive win rate at least above 50%. If you go on average that a player is going to have between 53 to 55%, which is a good win rate. Do not get me wrong. Low, but it's good. Ideally, 62 to 65 is where you want to be. That is completely unrealistic, actually. That's minor. I'll preface this. So, like 65% win rate. If you think that is what you're going to attain, I'll tell you right now, and everyone else will, that is only going to happen in small circumstances in a very tiny pool of testing. On average, your decks will have between 55 to 60%. If you are getting a 55% win rate with the deck, that is good.
That's
but
great.
Exactly. But that means
you're playing well.
Yes,
Like,
you're doing well. You're winning. You're ahead. That 55% win rate, you have to calculate. All right, so I have a 55% way to win. I need 24 wins. Factor that in for how many games that is, and I guarantee you, the amount of games per rank is going to be somewhere in the range of about 100 to 130. You're going to have to play the course of about 130 games to get enough wins in a consecutive row to hit your rank at a whole new level that's going like plat to diamond, and then another set of 100 games to go diamond to mythic.
And you're going up against players who have done that, like who are at the same level as you.
Yep.
Yeah. So
different.
It is difficult. Yep. But beyond that, here's the other thing. If you get into Mythic every single month, you may think, "Oh, I am a phenomenal Magic player because I can do this every single month." The reality is, that means you play a whole lot of Arena every single month. That's it. You're probably a good player, right? With that much experience and an above average win rate. So yeah, okay, great. Like, I'm not saying it's not an accomplishment, but the reality is it is saying more about how much you're playing than how good you are compared to everybody else. Extremely. The moment you get up into the numbers within Mythic at the end of the month when people are really shooting for it, that's legit. Like, if you end the month at like number 1 or like with a number attached to your rank, you kicked a lot of butt that month. Good work. Like, that's really hard to maintain because that's a finite pool and people are gunning for it. So that's different than like if you've made it to Mythic and you're chilling at the you're 97, 98%. Great. Again, nothing wrong with it. But that is more of an indicator of how much you've played than like your skill compared to the rest of the players. You know, because I'll be honest, I play a ton of Arena. I really do. I stream Arena 5 days a week. Excuse me, 5 days a week. Play an absolute just metric ton of this game, right?
Yep.
But I don't make Mythic every season. I don't, because I generally spend more time doing janky brews in the play queue and doing battles with my viewer. And like, I spend a lot of time not on the ladder because I'm here to have a good time. I'm not worried about the competitive experience. And as a result, a lot of Magic audience members who come for arena content, I've been written off by some people. I've definitely had people come into my chat and be like, "What rank are you?" And I was like, "Oh, right now I'm in Diamond, and I don't know. We'll see." And they disappear, you know. And it's like, and that's okay. Like, all right, this I'm not putting out the content. You're rock on. Have a good day, you know. But it's interesting because it's easy to get hung up on that. And
Extremely.
the other side of the coin, if you're going for competitive excellence, if that is the way that you engage with the game and that is how you want to enjoy yourself, great. Have fun, get after it. Um, but make sure that you're having fun.
Thank you
If the
right there.
competition is enjoyable, if the grind for excellence over others and getting a high win rate, if that part of the game is appealing and is driving you, go for it. That's great. Like, there's nothing wrong with that. But also, if you just want to put together goofy combos and play a few games at the end of the day and enjoy yourself on Arena and just enjoy the experience of playing Magic, there's nothing wrong with that either. I know I'm on that side. At the end of the day, make sure you are having fun. It's a game. We play games to have fun. Never lose sight of that. And it is very easy to lose sight of that,
Oh
given
yeah.
the discourse, especially around the Arena client specifically.
It only takes 3 games on Arena really to get into like a frustrated cycle. It doesn't take a lot.
Mm-hmm.
I
No.
like I will avoid, I will say, getting salty for the most part. I've definitely had it or been close, but like if I've had 3 losses in a row in best of 3, and again, this ties into the time it
Mm-hmm.
takes to rank up and win rate and the different experience of like tournament to ladder.
Mm-hmm.
If I get 3 losses in tournament, I'm like, well, I'll go play side events for the day. If I get 3 losses in a row in arena, I'm like, that is a whole rank I've gone down. That's probably an hour and a half of time, and I'm like, what have I been doing? Very different
100%.
feel, but like Ham
Yeah.
said it right. You gotta keep having the fun, even if you're
Mhm.
losing. Find the silver lining in it, right? Like that's the again the difference between paper and arena. It's much easier to get frustrated at arena and Magic in general by playing in arena versus getting
Mhm.
frustrated in paper.
Absolutely. Yeah, if you're at an event, if you're in paper, yeah, and you lose 3 matches in a row because you just got paired up against really rough matchups and you didn't draw your, you know, your removal or whatever the case may be. Like, yeah, it feels bad, but the rest of your day's wide open. Maybe you can go, you know, get a taco from that place down the road that looked kind
Yeah,
of cool, and then, you know, and then yeah, jump into some commander games and yeah, have some fun. Like, you can enjoy yourself and still make a day of it. Whereas, yeah, on arena, it's like, all right, I just played for 2 hours and I got my teeth kicked in by the domain list consistently. It's like, well, this is unpleasant. You know, and it's funny because it's funny. But as a deck builder, that's where things get fun
it
because
is.
you can look and see, okay, what are the matchups that are beating me? Where am I failing? And then the cool thing about again having all the cards on the arena, you get done with the match on the ladder, you
Yep.
go right back into the deck builder, tweak some things, and as a result, like I right now, for example, I have a Golgari aggro list that was one of my kind of low to the ground um attempts at making kind of a sweaty ladder deck, right? That was my goal. And so it's
Mhm.
running the Dread Knight, it's running Tenacious Underdog. I've got 2 Shellys in there. Like I'm doing all the things, right? I'm doing the typical Golgari things. 4 Restless
Yes.
Cottage, let's go. And I found I kept getting paired up against the domain list. For some reason, at that point, I was in deep platinum, I think. I'm now in diamond, and that got me a good portion of it. But I found I kept getting paired up against the domain list. And
Hmm.
so, like, I had some Terra Sunders, you know, they had all been in the sideboard. I then went to like 2 in the main, 2 in the side. And then Sunfall was one that just kept getting me over and over and over again. And I didn't really have a clean answer to it. And so I found I run in that deck now, it is in its best spot that I think I've gotten it. I run 3 Duress in the main and I have the 4th in the board. Because the reality is, if they have the Sunfall, I'm dead. So I'm going to do everything I can to make sure they do not get to all of the Sunfall. I don't have counter magic, but I can strip it out of your hand, dang it. And
I,
yeah, and it
the,
works.
It does. And this brings up a fantastic point, the meta difference between paper and arena.
Oh my goodness.
Decks in
Yep.
paper will always have a slight difference than decks on arena because decks in
Mm-hmm.
paper are tweaked to tournaments, just like how arena decks for tournaments are different than on ladder. And Ham has brought up one of the biggest points that I love to play in for arena and best of three. You have a sideboard. Bloody use the
You
sideboard.
do.
Make your
Do
main
it.
deck best tweaked against the deck that's going to give you the biggest problems or what you're seeing the most. Bringing in
Mm-hmm.
duress in the main, that's a change you can easily make on the ladder. And if you're, I assume you're running cut downs.
I mean, so I
Yeah.
have some. I think I've got like 2 or 3 in the main, and then I've got
Okay.
the rest in the sideboard. Because yes, like 4 cut downs is in certain matchups. But
Yeah. But like in that case, like the cut downs could maybe go in the
Mm-hmm.
sideboard and the duresses in the main because
Totally.
that's the thing. But the flexibility and dynamic deck changing environment is so amazing on Arena. You don't quite get that same experience in paper because you're building a deck for a specific tournament or play. Maybe like command, obviously Commander's different in that sense, but like in the competitive play, Arena has a much more diverse fluctuation of deck lists that perform on the
Yeah.
ladder environment because of that interaction, and it is amazing for that.
Yeah. Well, it's also really funny because you'll see decks that will become popular, even if they're not necessarily good. and
Crokies.
yeah, we see that all the time. The one that will always blow my mind is Poison Ivy deck when we
Oh god.
like Ivy and Rot Priest. People are like, "Oh, this is gonna be the greatest thing ever," and they just went hard on it. And like after thousands upon thousands of games, it had like a 45% win rate, like across all the different players. Like, guys, this is terrible. We need to, you need to knock it off. It's not winning. And but as a result, though, if you knew you were going up against that, like if you knew that that's the popular deck everybody's trying to make work, I'm gonna run a whole bunch of cut downs. I'm
Oh
gonna
yeah.
run a whole bunch of Brotherhood's Ends. I'm gonna run a whole bunch of these like super cheap ways to just keep creatures off the board. Because if you don't have a creature on the board, you have a handful of March of Burgeoning Lives and Tameo Safekeeping.
Woohoo!
Have fun with that. It's great. So like be aware of what you're going up against. The other thing is best of one versus best of three. So yeah, I love
Yep.
best of three. And I played best of one for a long time because I was intimidated of sideboarding and I had gotten it into my head that I was somehow bad at sideboarding. When the reality is I was afraid of sideboarding. That is a very different thing.
Extremely.
And since making the cut over to best of three, my appreciation, there were two things that I've done on Arena in the last few years that has increased my enjoyment of the client more than anything else. And I
Playing
highly
dragons,
recommend
right?
everybody. I'm sorry.
Playing
Well,
dragons,
yeah,
right?
always include dragons. Yeah, of course. And then there's even a dinosaur dragon now. Nobody has any excuse. Anyway, they're in all the colors. Just do it. Anyway, but that aside, the two things that I've done is I switched to best of three as my primary gameplay mode if I'm playing standard. The gameplay is much more dynamic. You get a lot more gameplay decisions. I feel like my agency as a player beyond the mulligan choice is much greater, and as a result I'm enjoying the gameplay much more because you can get to the end of a best of one match and just look at it and it's like I was going up against mono red, they were on the play, and I mulliganed to 5 and never saw any of my cut downs. It's like, what was I supposed to do? Whereas in best of three, you can, when you get done with a match, you can look back and identify different points where you made different decisions where it's like, would it have changed the outcome? I don't know, but maybe. What can I learn from that?
Mhm.
And there's always, because there's so much to do, and I love that. So, but switching to best of three, even though I was absolute crap at sideboarding at first, and to be honest, building sideboards is hard. It really
Extremely,
is.
it
Like
is.
yeah, there is a nuance to it, and except that if you're a deck builder out there, your first few sideboards are going to be rough. But the trick is go into those matches, and when you go to your sideboard, think, what do I want to bring in here? Like, what could I use in this match? Look at your sideboard. Is it there? And if it's not, think about that and go in and maybe make a change. But also be aware, how often am I going to see this?
Yeah.
That's the other thing. Sometimes you go up against like gonzo combo decks that you're just never going to see again. Like, don't adjust for those.
There
You
is
know?
a third point I'd like to
Yeah.
draw on this too.
Please.
If every time you are going into a sideboard and you are always taking out the same one or two cards from your main deck and bringing in the sideboard cards for those cards, consider this. Move those sideboard cards to the main deck
Yeah.
because there's probably a reason why you're always cutting them. I was doing a bunch of, like I said, the fight rigging deck games. I had a
Mhm.
Galta in there just for the lulls. But every game 2 and 3, I was sideboarding out Galta, and I'm like, I don't play this. I haven't played it. I should just cut it from the list. And I did.
You
It's
should just
not
cut it.
there. Now
Yeah,
it's something else. I think it's a third of Tali, which is just
great.
better anyways. But yeah,
It's
like
just better anyways. Yep.
analyze what you're doing. Like Ham said,
Analyze that.
it's the best
100%.
thing you can do.
Oh my goodness, that's so important. That's so important. But then the other thing that I did that improved my appreciation for the client, I disabled email. So all the
That's a
oopses and
smart
the
one.
your goes, I don't deal with that. It's great. Like,
I really should do
that's a
that.
whole level of nonsense that I just don't. And I highly recommend. There's a setting you can just turn them off.
Is there? Okay.
There is. Yeah, it's in the gameplay settings menu.
Hmm.
And I always find it funny whenever they're like, you can get this sticker pack for $20. It's like, and I'm never gonna see them. You guys have fun. Yeah.
If I want stickers, I'll play Infinity. Woohoo!
Woohoo! Exactly.
Or I'll play Rolls. Woohoo!
And fun fact though, the other thing about that, just a little detail, if you pair up against somebody and they have a pet, and the pet appears to be sleeping throughout the whole course of the match, that's the visual cue that they don't have emotes on. And so they will not be able to see that. So if you ever get paired up against me on the ladder, my pet's gonna be sleepy. That just is what it is. Because again, I appreciate the game much more when I don't have to deal with that. Because I found that the number of oops and good games and your goes, I always took them to be offensive, even if they weren't intended that way, because you can't tell.
You really
know,
can't.
like, and yeah, there were enough people who were just spamming them constantly that I got annoyed to buy them. And I have no doubt there were plenty of people who were saying good game legitimately as like a tip of the cap and like meaning to be good sports about it. And I was just like, this jerk, I don't want to deal with this. I just, for my own mental health, I'm just gonna this off. And yeah, I recommend you do the same if that's something that you find annoying. Just put it out there. Anyway, cool.
But yeah.
But yes. So yeah, Arena, it's a beautiful, beautiful thing. And if you are interested in the other thing that I think is great for, onboarding new players.
Absolutely, yes.
Because you can actually play it for free, and you can learn how Magic is played for free to get a taste of whether or not it's interesting. That I think is really important. And so that I think is a great learning tool, just to teach the basics. You know, you can do the color challenges on Arena, and then show up at a commander night and have somebody give you a deck, assuming they don't give you, you know, something that's, you know, some crazy goofy combo.
Yeah, like
you know, as
not
assuming
something
they
absurd.
give you like a new player friendly deck and the pod is cool with, you know, you asking questions as you go. But like you can understand the basics and you can keep up, you know, because of that. And I think that's really cool. The new color challenge, or the color challenges and the player onboarding process on Arena is actually a really neat tool, and I'm glad it exists. So
I will also say that is actually one of the few tutorials that I have ever lost the first time I played it, because Nicol Bolas is a dirty cheater.
Bolas is a cheater. Yeah, it's when it's funny because I took a 10-year break from Magic, right? And so I started back in 2003. So Scourge was my first set. So around the time when the current, you know, around the current modern card pool goes back to 8th edition. Like 8th edition was the first core set that came out.
We old.
So I know, right? Yes, exactly.
We were there when the ancient rules were written.
And the fun part about that was there at that point, at least I wasn't reading stuff on the internet for spoilers and stuff. And
I wasn't. They didn't exist prominent with the internet when we were kids.
Yeah, exactly. It was out there, but
it was a magazine.
Exactly.
You were checking TCG prices in a magazine.
Yeah,
this is
I remember opening a pack of Darksteel, and was it Darksteel or was it Mirrodin? Skull Clamp. I remember opening and reading Skull Clamp for the first time with it in my hand. I had never seen the card. And my immediate reaction is, holy crap, this is cracked. And that ended up being correct. I was like, draw 2 cards? 2 cards.
It says 2, right? Let me get the magnifier.
It says 2? Let me reread that real quick. Yeah, it's 2 cards? No way. Yeah, it's one of those. But anyway, and that was a moment that I got to have because I didn't see somebody post it to Instagram a week before, you know, the pack arrived or whatever. But that's its own discussion. But anyway, so I took 10 years off the game, right? And I played Reanimator back in the day. I had a Patriarch bidding deck that was used to reanimate Legends. I remember when Legend was type to give you an idea of how vintage that is. And so I remember, like, I had a Reanimator deck back in the day, and then I remember learning 10 years later after not playing Magic at all, finally logging into Arena and firing up a game, or you know, going through the tutorial and doing the battle against Nicol Bolas. He might have beat me the first 2. because at one point he discard. I don't know if it's the same tutorial now as it was then, but he discarded like a dragon, and you have a moment of
Yeah,
just like,
no, it's the
wait,
same.
what?
It's the same.
It is the same one still. Okay,
Volcanic
great.
Dragon.
Yeah, he discards
Yeah.
the volcanic dragon. Yeah, and you have, and I remember having a moment of just like, wait, why would he want to discard that? It looks like a good creature. And the next turn he reanimates. Like, oh dang it! Of course, it's magic. That's the thing you can do.
He gotcha.
Yeah,
He
got
gotcha.
me. Oh, yep. Well played. Well played, Nikki B. You got me on this one. Yeah. No, so that kind of thing is just it's great. It's actually a really cool tool. And in that case, I already knew the basics, but it was getting me back in the game in this
Yeah.
way, and it like helped kind of knock the rust off. And that's also a kind of tale as old as time, right? You know, the idea of
It
oh, I played
is.
back in the day, but I wonder what's going on. It's like fun fact: Magic the Gathering, much like dinosaurs, doesn't stop being cool when you're not a kid anymore. Just saying.
No, it just gets better and better
Great.
and
Still
better.
great.
You know, I think that's going to be the great thing. I am happy Arena is a thing, and I hope it continues to be a great thing. Listeners,
I'm glad.
what do you think of Arena? Are you a fan of Arena, or are you a paper player in general? Are you like Ham and I, and you med both together? Let us know in the comments down below. And,
We'd love to hear from you.
yeah.
Yeah.
And Ham, where can the
Alright.
fine people find you, my friend?
So I am primarily on Twitch these days, twitch.tv/Hamhocks42. I also have a couple of other collaborative projects that I'm working on, which is delightful. Yeah, I'm on a commander show called Hot Soup, where it's me and Brouhaha Gaming, and we kind of ramble incoherently for a certain amount of time. It's a ton of fun. And then I also have the Magic Jank podcast, which I'm a team member of. And it's a good time. So yeah. But how about you, man? Where can people find you out there on the internet?
Yeah, I mean, y'all can always find me at Twitch, Twitter, TikTok, Instagram, and YouTube at Astralsflame. I'm doing MTG Arena Standard or Commander. And I'll always tell you should be playing Jund or Dragons, and that's Dragons with an S between the brackets at the end. Because if you can't play a lot, you should at least play one.
Absolutely.
And it's
What?
going to be good
Yeah,
times.
100%. And then when it comes to the deck brewing, if I can just help kind of add some context there,
Absolutely.
we were talking about the benefit of being able to brew your decks in between matches on the ladder on Arena, and that's something that Astros, you do that very well, and that's something on your streams you get to follow along in that process, and so identifying like, oh, what's working, what's not, am I sideboarding, what am I missing, like where are my bad matchups, like you narrate that stuff as you're making those decisions, and it's fun to watch. So
I appreciate that.
definitely,
Thank you.
absolutely,
I
yeah.
just like to take a dumb idea or a great idea and see if it works and make it something. I don't, tonight what am I even? I think this weekend I'm trying a new take on Naya Exile with the Bonehorn Dracusaur. Because Dragon Exile seems good with PNLR.
Yep. Absolutely.
And I was actually going to try a potential Golgari deck. Because you've got me thinking of some Golgari shenanigans. So
I do like Golgari shenanigans. Yeah.
Might be trying that.
Good stuff.
Yeah.
Excellent. Looking forward to see what you come up with. Very cool.
Thanks so much, everyone. I hope you have a fantastic time. Thank you for listening to this episode of Landlords. And as always, if you want to stay up to date on the Landlords action, drop us a follow, keep up to date. And, well, I've already said it once, but I'll say it again. As always, we are your landlords. We'll catch you next time.